Hello, welcome to SoundOrg TV. And today we're delighted to have as our guest Colin Pratt, who's the sales director of Chord Electronics in England. Colin, welcome, mate. Good to see you again.
Yeah, well, thanks. Thanks very much for the invite. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. So what's life like in the COVID lockdown of England at the moment?
Um, Groundhog Day, I think. It's interesting times. It's a year now, isn't it? So I think some of the things we're slowly getting used to. Some of the things we're desperately looking forward to rejoining. Simple things like restaurant visits, seeing our friends. For me, I've not been in the office now. I live 200 miles from the office. I've not visited the office for best part of the year, so I miss face-to-face communication with our team. They're not just employees; they're also personal friends, family friends.
Colin, as you know, we've kind of come on recently with Chord Electronics, although we used to be associated with it many, many years ago. Sales have been absolutely phenomenal, and our retailers are doing a great job getting people excited about the products. Obviously, there's been some delays due to COVID. Could you share a little bit about how COVID's impacted Chord and some of the steps you're trying to do and increase production?
Yeah, so I think basically a little bit of history of how COVID affected the UK. Now, we obviously have distribution partners all around the world, and I'm not saying it started in China. I'm saying it was discovered first in China, and we have close friends over there. And obviously, we were watching the news as this wave was coming towards us, and then we saw sales change dramatically as each region was affected by this awful situation. So I think we treated it very seriously from the first instance. We felt that this was something to be taken seriously. Previous to COVID, as a company, knowing because of the technology that we employ, we'd already started investing in more components, more chipsets, Xilinx chips, stuff that's getting longer and longer lead times. So we'd already been pre-investing in this to reduce existing lead times anyway. So this actually set us in good stead for what was to come. I think when Italy closed its borders, it suddenly felt to be, that's when I think the reality hit the UK, that this thing was real and not something from the other side of the world. The UK started to go into lockdown. The lockdown basically meant every country has obviously reacted differently. The UK's lockdown has been quite firm at times. So no restaurants, no bars, the only shops open, food and pharmaceuticals. So the very first instance, we had an emergency meeting and said, well, first and foremost, the biggest priority for us is our staff. The safety of our staff is paramount. We have a cross section of ages. So some of the more mature engineers, they had to go home straight away to be looked after to shield. We sent marketing home, sales, we're usually satellites anyways, but the sales team went home, administration went home, and then everyone was set up to try and work from home the best they could whilst we developed systems to help everyone work. Because as you know, when you're working in an office environment, you can talk to each other and problems get resolved just by a quick conversation. So we went from working in primarily the one location to, I think it was 18 different locations trying to manage, on top of obviously emergency measures coming in from the government. So once we'd kind of settled into a work plan, we had to reduce our staff from 30 down to, I think initially it was about 4 or 5. So obviously we kept everyone unemployed and on full pay, but actually in our production facility, we were massively understaffed. So the first thing again we cut was, unfortunately, was R&D, because the priority is to make equipment for existing orders and to look after the customers and to keep the income coming. Looking forward, everyone was really worried about what was going to happen. No one has a crystal ball. It's unprecedented times. No one can predict the situation. Any hiccup in communication, we analysed and we put in systems to improve it, to improve communications. We bought laptops for people. We talked to some of our subcontractors who might make the boards for us. We supplied them with the metalwork and taught them how to make the complete component. But to help that, we then had to buy them the test equipment. And of course, test equipment, you'd say, had a 2-week lead time. COVID struck, 2-month lead time. But we started investing where we could to help who we could to make the whole build process come together. And what the guys have done in the office has been heroic. The hours they're putting in to bring the product out. What quickly we learned was that retailers adapted to the environment in many countries. There were customers sat at home who started listening to their hi-fi again. They weren't necessarily thinking about their next holiday, their next car, because that had been stopped by the pandemic. And they started listening to their hi-fi equipment again. And I think a lot of people got the bug back. And we started seeing orders coming in. We adapted our policy slightly. We're a firm believer in what we call bricks and mortar. We want customers to enjoy the experience at a retailer, to make sure that they are buying the right bit of kit, because anything from us is an investment. But what we said we'd help the retailer. So if they talked to the customer and the customer said, we'll have that, we would ship to the customer knowing that the retailer was at the end of the phone for the customer. And we put in a load of measures like that, extra cleaning, deep cleaning of all the components before they left, to make people feel more comfortable that we were doing the most responsible actions we could for the environment.
Have you seen a global increase in sales like we've seen in the States here?
It depends on the market. So in general, yes. Some markets maybe have not reacted the same way, but I think that might have a reaction, that might be compared to maybe how they've handled the situation. I don't want to judge by any stretch of the imagination, but some countries have handled it in different ways. I mean, it's no secret we're delighted with the situation in America. The fact that we have a distributor in America that front and foremost, it's customer focused. You know, how do we get the customer sorted? How do we get the customer happy? Be it supplying the right product or employing the right dealer or looking after a problem. You know, looking after a problem is absolutely paramount to us. And the way that your team works to make that happen makes for a more successful product, because customers and retailers have more faith in the product, because effectively Chord Electronics is now in America, it's the sound organization. You know, the two are intrinsically linked now because of your reputation and our reputation. Parts of Europe are going gangbusters. Scandinavia, fantastic. They've dealt with it very differently. I think Sweden had a no lockdown rule. Herd immunity was their theory. The UK, well, man, it's like I think because everyone is in the same situation, everyone has pulled together. A lot of people have forgotten some of the life stresses that might have gotten on top of them, or might have gotten in the way. I think when a company holds its hand up and says, "We will help. How can we help? Talk to us." Everyone in that chain benefits, and the world's in a bad place at the moment, and everyone needs to sit together and help each other. And I think the right partners have done that.
Yep. Colin, can we talk a little bit about the future? And I'm sure everyone would like to know what's coming. What can you share with the guys out there about new products from Chord?
Okay, so I can't really say about new product that's not official. But we've got, I can show you one product now, which has been a long awaited product. You know, it's probably one of the most common questions I ask: when is X coming? And I can now answer that fairly accurately. Don't hold me to it 100%. We've got certainly another 3 products that are due first half of this year, which I'm very excited for. What I would call, a couple of them are called what I would call disruptive products. So they're putting in chord tech into something that you look at first instance, and then when you get to experience it, it puts a smile on your face. So I'm certainly looking forward to some of the kit coming out. There's a major launch coming, certainly in the next couple of months as well. So all I can say is keep your eyes peeled on our social media. Obviously, your dealers will be keeping an eye on you, and the news will come out as soon as we can officially tell you.
Colin, for those new to Chord, could you just give a very brief history of the company and what you personally are most excited about at Chord? Because you've been there some years now and you've probably seen an evolution of the company. But just share, if you would, how the company got started and the kind of basic tenets of the company.
Just a quick interaction. My history, so with Chord Electronics, was I was actually a Chord customer and then a Chord retailer. And then I had the opportunity to work for Chord Electronics, and I took advantage of that. And I've enjoyed it. I've been with Chord for 10 years now. I've been working alongside Chord for probably 20 years. And in that time, as a customer, as a retailer, and as a member of staff, I've watched the transition of Chord change. So when I first started, Chord Electronics was a mix of analog and digital product. I fell in love with what is now the Ultima Pre, Ultima 3 monos, and the Red Reference, which was an integrated CD player with Rob Watt's DAC technology in it. That was what made me invest in Chord Electronics as a retailer, as my primary reference system. But what I saw was through the introduction of Hugo 1 through to Mojo, Dave, TT, TT2, Hugo 2, etc., was Chord was understandably focusing on digital technology, the DACs. Rob Watts makes some incredible product. It was his original DAC from Chord Electronics, the DAC 64, which made me realize that digital is actually an incredibly valid and enjoyable way of listening to music. But in my heart, I liked the idea that Chord Electronics was an entire brand, not just a part that makes digital. Because historically, back in the late 80s, John Franks had retired from working in aerospace and these large companies he was directors of. He's an incredibly clever guy who understands power supply technology like no one else I can immediately think of. And he developed this power supply technology to utilize in amplification. And the short story is that this amplification was presented to the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation. And in the late 80s and early 90s, if you got a stamp of approval from the BBC, it opened doors to studios because it was like an industry standard. And normally the BBC would say, yes, it's very nice, but would you mind adjusting this, changing that, etc. But they didn't. They just said, this is fantastic. And they equipped all of their studios with with John's amplifiers. So as soon as the BBC were involved, all of a sudden the phone starts ringing and you get phone calls from the likes of Abbey Road Studios, Air Studios, many, many others, Paul McCartney Studios. For me, the big one is Ray Charles Sounds. For me, I don't think Ray Charles was involved, sadly, because he passed, but Ray Charles to me is the epitome of music. But also diverse acts like the Wu-Tang Clan and the Prodigy, Herbie Hancock. Anyway, so the studio started buying into Chord Electronics, and then John branched out and started making his amplifiers for the domestic market. But like I said, then Chord Electronics sort of started going down the DAC front. Now, a few short years ago, John sort of expanded on this technology that he was aware of called feed-forward error correction, which effectively is just eliminating the noise through the path of the amplifier. So Rob Watts has made these incredibly low noise floored DACs, but you need to hear that through the analog stages. So John started working on this product, and he made an amplifier in the choral range called Etude, which is the study of music. And it was a fantastic little product. So naturally, we rolled that out into then what became the Ultima range. We started then at the top, so the Ultima product, and then Ultima 2, 3, 5, and 6 monos and stereos. And the uptake in analog products from Chord Electronics has been amazing. So we have the team have now, instead of having a corner in our premises, now have a floor, and the sales are growing and growing and growing. So from my side, to see Chord Electronics coming back to being a complete brand that makes systems of amazing, innovative digital product with innovative analog product, I think it's really exciting, and it makes me feel, thrilled to have been on part of this journey.
Where do you see the industry going in the next few years, coming out of where we are? What changes do you think? Put on your crystal ball hat.
Well, I think the world deserves one hell of a big party, for starters. I'm looking forward to just meeting up with friends and having hugs. I think that's one of the things I miss most, and concerts. But the industry, the companies that have not just a real story, but they have a real technology, provable technology behind their product, have a future. I think this time out, should we call it, has reawakened people's passion for music, realized how therapeutic music can be in whichever form or format. And I'm hoping that people will realize the value of, or appreciate more the value of listening to music and how much healing it can offer people. A lot of people are in a very heightened state of stress. If they're not immediately affected by COVID, they may be financially affected by COVID, adversely affected. And music is always something to help reduce those stress levels. So I think that it's taught people that there is, we can still provide equipment to enjoy music. The way people listen to music is obviously changing. Vinyl is still obviously very, very popular. I'm sure you're seeing that. But polarizing the streaming service and making it easier and more accessible to consumers, rather than, an audiophile is happy to pull out cables and tweak and twist and twirl. We want to make it as simple and as easy as possible, but give the consumer the best possible result at the end. I think the stores, the retail shops that have been proactive through these difficult times, I think people are starting to appreciate the benefit of a store more, because even though they're closed, the close communication of constantly being on the phone or emailing, to have the extra support, I think has benefited a lot of retailers, and made retailers realize that, you need to talk to the customer beyond the purchase point, but when it's in home and when they've lived with it for a few days, how are you getting on with it? Is everything okay? So there's a bigger focus on customer support and customer care, which I'm a big fan of, rather than the faceless online sales. I think the future for companies with a strong message is good. I genuinely think that.
Well, Colin, thank you for spending part of your evening with us. We really appreciate it. It's great to see you again, my friend, and here's to that hug and that first beer together.
I can't wait to come over to America. I'm thrilled with how the change has come about in America and Canada. I'm thrilled to be working with your team, and yeah, to come over to America and Canada and see you guys in person. I can't wait. And the first opportunity, I'll be there. And thank you for giving me the opportunity at this end.
Well, we really appreciate all the support you've given us and our team, and we can only do as good a job as the support we're given, and you guys have been absolutely phenomenal. So
I'll pass that on. I mean, the guys in the office, we got a lovely email from one of your team, and I forwarded it to the office, and Matt printed off that email and put it on everyone's desk and forwarded it to everyone who's working remotely in the team. And it really does lift the spirit, because sometimes you do get bogged down with the fact that, it's hard. It's hard emotionally, it's hard physically with all the stuff that's being packed, etc., with the minimum staff. The fact that everyone's mucking in to help. Matt Bartlett, MD, Managing Director of Chord Electronics, been there since, let's say, day 2, has been coming in at 6 o'clock in the morning to disinfect the place so it's safe for his staff. It's that kind of, no one's bigger than the other. Everyone's in it together. We're all trying where we can to make it all work. It's a nice feeling.
well, thank you again, Colin. Good to see you, mate.